third season of the Now Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser podcast. We changed things up a bit with a name change, and the podcast is full of diverse guests who have fascinating stories of how they are leading their own lives, taking risks, serving others, and loving the lives they lead. They will share how they lead their own lit-up lives, how they achieved inner peace and joy, and the work they did to get there, and continue to do to stay there. Join Debbie this season as she digs in, shares how she started and continues to love herself, love those around her, and love the work she feels called to do. This season, you will hear some real and deep areas of Debbie's life as she shares the work she has done and continues to do to lead her own life in the hopes that through her experiences, you might be able to move into a more lit up life yourself. Listen in as she shares experiences, stories, and tools to help you. Now let's get started.
Hello. This is Debbie Heiser with Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser, and I am so excited to be coming to you. We have 2 more sessions of these guiding principles. Today, we're going to be talking about guiding principle number 9 and 10. And for those of you that have missed, I am going to suggest that you go back and listen to the previous podcast where I go in depth into these 12 guiding principles. But I will review each one of them for you. Number 1 is I will be 100% responsible for myself and to others 100% of the time. 4 and 2 are very important words there. Number 2, I will have fun. Number 3, I will not ask why. Why is not important. It's only for learning concepts. Number 4, I will stay current with my feelings, mad, sad, glad, and afraid. Number 5, I will be direct and confront in a loving manner. A loving and gentle manner, excuse me. Number 6, I will tell the undisputable truth. And if I cannot do that, I will be honest. Number 7, I will solely do my work and no one else's. Number 8, I will choose a win-win mentality. I will not support or play the victim game. We talked a lot about the victim game in the last podcast. So I would recommend to you, if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to that one. This one will make a little bit more sense. Number 9 is I will forgive. What I choose not to forgive today, I will manage in a loving and gentle manner. And number 10 is I will use I statements, be specific, and use the responsible listening model at all times. So let's dig in, shall we? I say this, I think, every time, but every single one of these guiding principles is just so, I don't know, it's been really critical in my life. And when I think about forgiveness is really, it's more than saying I'm sorry. Like when I look at it, saying I'm sorry to someone is really more about you because you want to feel better and you're saying I'm sorry, putting the spotlight on you instead of asking someone to forgive you, which then gives them ultimately the authority or power to say, yes, I forgive you, or no, I don't. When you say, I'm sorry, you're taking that choice away from that other person. So it's a much more vulnerable place to be in, at least from my experience. When I ask someone to forgive me, that's an act of vulnerability. But the other thing is too, a lot of times we say, I'm sorry a lot and don't really mean it. It's almost like that. Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Really? Are you fine? And so a good friend of mine, my best friend, actually taught me, instead of saying, hey, I'm sorry I'm late, turn it around again and say, thank you for being patient and waiting for me. Again, it's about putting the onus when you're talking about sorry and forgiveness. Now, when I say I will forgive, the act of forgiveness is so liberating. Forgiveness, you can forgive people internally without actually meeting them and letting them know that you're forgiving them. And it's an act of, there's things that you can do. So this act is a verb. So there's been things that I've done for forgiveness where I've written letters and then done some kind of ceremony around the letter to let it go. I have gone to one of these light, I forget what they call them, but you actually go somewhere and you get this lantern and I think it's Bright Lights maybe is the name of it, but thousands of lanterns that everybody lets off at the same time and you draw on them beforehand and do all of this thing. And so the first time I did it, I did that as a ceremony of forgiveness and letting go of some of those things that were keeping me not just stuck, but keeping me in a space that I no longer felt like fit me. So the act of forgiveness itself is actually something we do. And internally, it helps us, because when you're angry with someone, when you are upset about something and you're not willing to forgive someone else, A, it ruins relationships. And B, can be passive aggressive. You may still have a relationship, but it's not healthy. And third, it's really more hurtful to you as an individual than it is to the person you're forgiving, or that you're angry with, excuse me. And so the act of forgiveness is a way to free yourself, a way to empower yourself. Now, I will say too, that there are many times that when I come right down to it, it's about forgiving myself. And there's things that I've done in my life that maybe I'm upset. And I'm my own worst critical parent. I'm my own worst critic. And most of us are. And that's about living in negative expectation and kind of that, when's it going to drop kind of thing. And so really, when I look at it, I don't want to go too quickly into I have to just forgive myself, because a lot of times there are things that I do need to forgive other people for hurts that may not have been their intention, but either way, it's the way I interpreted it, which then, if you remember from some of my other podcasts, create the belief in our subconscious brain about something. So it's not only then too about us, but when you forgive other people and when you forgive yourself and let go of this burden that's potentially been chaining you and like just weighting you down, when you do that, it affects other people around you. It affects your kids. It affects your relationships, just people around you, because all of a sudden you don't have this weight anymore. And you're not just focused on how has somebody done me wrong. You're not in the victim game. So there are times that we're not ready to forgive, right? There's times that we're really specific, and that's important, to be really specific about what you're forgiving, because the more specific you are and the clearer that you can be, then it helps you to let it go. And so when you look at too, that act of forgiveness, sometimes we can be really specific on what we need to forgive someone for, the hurts that have been done to us or the wrongs that have been done to us. But sometimes we're not ready to let it go. I know, recently I had something that I was really heartbroken about, and I just needed to sit in the sad for a while. I just needed to be there, but I needed to then quickly, and I'm so glad I surround myself with people that are willing to say things to me in a loving and gentle manner. And I realized that I was so focused on what I wasn't getting that I wasn't being grateful or praising what I was receiving. So therefore, I was specific on what I felt like I needed to forgive others for, and what I felt like where I was wronged. But that act of forgiveness then allowed me to step out of the victim game. It allowed me to stop being passive aggressive. And I showed up in an entirely different energy, which then led to them being more open, led to them being more connected with me than they had in the past. So just keep that in mind. And I know I've said already that forgiving others is important, but forgiving ourselves is critical. And I can't begin to tell you how critical that is. So don't stop. Don't go too quickly to that point, because you can say, and I always say everything is centered around fear or love, and I can quickly get there, but sometimes I need to understand the steps before I get to that point. So sometimes understanding what were the wrongs and what specifically was wrong about that. Was that just a lie that I had going on in my own brand, or was that really the truth? Which a lot of times I find it's not the truth. And then it becomes a forgiveness practice on myself. So anyway, there is that piece of it. And then for the number 10, which is, I will use I statements, be specific, and use the responsible listening model. This really is about also not doing other people's work. So I know I catch myself doing this because I'm also teaching, but it's about using I statements. It's about being specific to myself and not speaking in why can I not say that today? Generalities. So when I say something about, oh, most people get upset about X, Y, and Z, well, that's a passive aggressive way of saying that I'm upset about something. Instead of saying I'm upset because we had a commitment that we were going to get together and you broke that commitment. And it's in a series of 3 or 4 times that you've broken that commitment, which makes my heart really sad because it weeds away on trust. And I really wanted to spend time with you. So that's an example of being very specific about something. Now, the responsible listening model is a communication tool that is really designed to listen more intentionally. And you become much more aware of yourself, your thoughts, your feelings. And it's really about 5 kind of responses. So it's not about reacting, because there's a huge difference between reacting to someone and responding. So when I'm looking at the responsible living model, it's about confronting sometimes, other times it's about seeking for understanding. So the first thing you do is you restate. So you ensure that you heard what the speaker was saying. Many times I say almost the exact same words that someone said. Other times I'm interpreting, but trying not to interpret through a lot of filters so that I'm not reading between the lines necessarily. And then I clarify and ask the speaker for more information if that's not what they said, or if I'm repeating the words they said to me, you can say, please help me understand, because I'm not quite certain I understand what you meant by X, Y, and Z. Once you've clarified, then it's about describing. So describing what you observe of the speaker. So repeating back to them what they said, clarifying, is that correct? Or can you help me understand this a little more? And then saying, oh, I observed that it seemed like you were frustrated with me. Or I observed tears, but they seem to be joyful. And then the 4th one is sharing, and it offers the listener the opportunity to respond or relate to the speaker. And so sharing what you saw and sharing what's happening with you and being specific about it, not generalities, and then resolving it. So it's used when it's clear to the speaker that you want to do something positive. So as an example, it might be, hey, what I heard you say is that when I chose to go to dinner with Chelsea, it upset you because we had made some plans and you felt like you were being left out. Did I capture that? And then you can say, well, I'm observing that is making you sad and I misunderstood. And so I feel sad too, because I would have loved to have spent time with you. And you're welcome to join Chelsea and I. And I'd like to know like what we can do to make this different in the future. And I'm so glad that you talked to me about this. And in the future, I can trust that we are going to talk about this. And in the future, maybe we both need to be more specific and clarify specific dates and determine whether or not we really are doing it versus just talking about it and not really committing. Period. So there's an example. Although there's probably better ones, but that's an example of a way to use that responsible listening model. So I would really, as you look at this, just practice even restating what people are saying. It helps you listen that much more intently. And it also, what I love about this tool is there's 4 stages of listening. And the first one is just about downloading. It's about you wanting to jump in and have somebody believe what you're saying. It's your agenda. And this tool really stops you and steps you back for a minute so that you truly are conversing versus it's not just me trying to get across my idea, and then it's not me listening to you to then be able to get my idea across. It's me being open and trying to hear what the other person is saying to me and coming to some type of resolution if it's a conflict, so that we can move forward and not have this take energy from us, not have this be something that's a craw that then ends up having to be something that we go back and have to look through from a forgiveness perspective because it sat and festered, right? There's forgiveness that goes on with that. And there's a great forgiveness practice. And it doesn't mean when you forgive someone that you're condoning what they did, by the way. And some forgivenesses take a long time to go through, and others a shorter period of time. And so keep that in mind too. And as you use I statements, it will help you ground into that. So like, as an example, I went through the forgiveness practice and actually went through some EMDR therapy to forgive the person in my family, not my immediate family, but in my extended family, who molested me when I was 8. And I went through a lot with that. And then I had to forgive myself too for sitting on it for so long. I hadn't told anybody for a long time. And that's a lot to live with. So that's an example of how to use I statements around that versus using you. So a lot of times if you catch yourself saying you, stop that, and see if you can catch yourself doing it. And then try to use the responsible listening model. And to start out with, just repeat what people have said to you. So what I heard you say was X, Y, and Z. And so I want to talk about principle 10, which is we just finished principle 10, which is I will use I statements, be specific, and use the responsible listening model. And so I want to talk about principle 11, which is I will maintain confidentiality at all times. And number 12, I will remove any blocks that keep me from loving myself and others. Now, when I think about this maintain confidentiality at all times, some things are obvious where we need to maintain confidentiality, and other things are not quite so obvious. But I always say err on the side of confidentiality, meaning if you're ever questioning whether or not you should tell someone something, it usually means you probably shouldn't. Now, where I got into trouble with this, and I used to do this all the time, and it breaks my heart that I used to do this to my son, Zach, where he would do something, and maybe it was funny or maybe it was a learning experience, and then I would share with a lot of people what was happening, and that's just not very nice. And he put up with a lot of that from me. And so over time and learning these guiding principles, I've realized this, and now it's just something that I don't do. It's just something you don't do, whether it's gossip, whether it's keeping the confidentiality of someone that says, hey, I want to tell you something, but I prefer you keep it close to your sleeve. But even more so than that, it's about when someone has a change in their life, when they're doing something, it's about either asking permission if you can share. As an example, I have a friend of mine who just joined a mastermind with me and made the investment to do it. And so I reached out to her and said, hey, can I tell these 2 people that know you in the group? And she said, absolutely. But it was a matter of me having the respect for her to ask before I just shared that story. And the other subtle piece that I was talking about is a lot of times it's not our story to tell. Whether it be her signing up for a mastermind or whether it be someone else doing something, whether it be a big event in their life or they're changing jobs or they're doing something else, it's just not my story to tell. And so anytime I find myself talking to someone and I realize it's not my story, it stops me and I redirect. And until I became aware of this, and I still do it on occasion, and even as I'm sharing my own story and being vulnerable and sharing what's happening, I've talked about how I was molested when I was a child. There are a lot of people in my extended family that don't know about this. And so I don't necessarily talk about who it was. They are no longer living. And I don't necessarily it's a fine line struggle, right? Because even as what I do for work, when I talk about what I've been through and some of the situations, it includes Brent, my ex-husband, it includes Zach. And so I have to make sure I'm only telling my story and not, and some of that intermerges together, but I need to make sure I'm not telling their story. And if I am going to, that I ask for permission from them to do that. So maintaining confidentiality is not just the blatant, hey, a business is going to close, but we need to keep this confidential, or hey, I'm going to ask somebody to marry me and I need for you to keep that a secret until I do it. It's not just that. It's even going so far as to talking about, and it's not just gossip, but talking about someone else's story. So I'll leave you with that piece of that on the confidentiality piece. And the last one is, I will remove any blocks that keep me from loving myself and others. Now, I will tell you, this is part of what I do, is I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love and not sacrificing what's important to them. And a big piece of what we do is talk about what you want, but wanting something comes from a scarcity model. So then taking that scarcity model and turning it and flipping it on its toes to say, I am a woman who X, Y, and Z. And then when I look at that, I have to really dig in and uncover, well, what stopped me from doing that before? I'm a smart, educated woman. I have done a lot of things successfully. I've also screwed up a lot of things successfully. And so, I take the screw ups and I take the things I've done well, and then it's about looking at and saying, why am I not doing this? If I have this plan that I want to go do, what's stopping me from doing it? And so that's the blocks. And that's a lot of what I do with my clients, is we come up with the external plan, and then we look at what are those blocks that are stopping you from doing it. And then I help guide you to find your teacher within to remove those blocks. So that is the 12 principles. Again, as a reminder, number one is I will be 100% responsible for myself and to others 100% of the time. I will have fun. I will not ask why. Why is not important. It's only important for learning concepts. Number four, I will stay current with my feelings, mad, sad, glad, and afraid. Number five, I will be direct and confront in a loving and gentle manner. Number six, I will tell the indisputable truth. And if I cannot do that, I will be honest. Number seven, I will solely do my work and no one else's. Number eight, I will choose a win-win mentality. I will not support or play the victim game. Number nine, I will choose to forgive. And what I choose not to forgive today, I will manage in a loving and gentle manner. Number 10, I will use I statements, be specific, and use the responsible listening model at all times. And number 11, I will maintain confidentiality at all times. And number 12, I will remove any blocks keeping me from loving myself and others. And with that, I hope everyone here has a fantastic holiday season, and that you have a wonderful new year and are ready to just lead your lit up life in 2022. Thanks so much for listening, and everyone have a great day.